with her big dumb face.
The longest opening sequence.
It's on this midlife crisis.
Oh my god, it's so good, guys.
We're not told that. Yeah, we do. We're not told that. It is written. It is written.
Ah! Did I scare you?
No, you didn't, because you didn't have a sound effect under it to
Oh,
cue me
I
to
should
know
have
when
done
I
it like
was
this.
scared. You gotta have the cue. You gotta have that sound effect. There we
Did
go.
that do it? Did that scare you?
That was just scary on its own.
Yeah, sure. What's up, fellers?
Not much.
McCurdy, when do you want to... McCurdy recently finished shooting his no-budget indie, and he has a teaser. When do you want to do that?
Oh, I was gonna
Now
say,
or
is
like-
there a trailer or anything we can watch?
It's like
It's like
it's just a
it's a
teaser.
teaser.
So we finished shooting it, and I wanted to show people who worked on it, and I wanted to show people like, hey, this is what we were working on, and it's very rough. It's not like, I kind of threw it together. There's no sound.
Yeah,
There
caveats
is a sound.
aside, when do you want to show it?
Let's show it right now. We could do it right now.
All right.
And maybe
do
show it again if there's more
It
people
better not
who come
suck.
into the...
Do it. But the
not
song
okay.
may or may not be
'Cause
copyrighted.
what if this
so...
teaser makes everyone not want to watch it?
Well,
Oh,
that's
like an
fine.
anti-teaser.
Anti-teaser.
Like a boner killer.
Oh, this one sounds...
audio.
Hold.
Whoa,
Well,
I'm
yeah, no
interested
audio.
already, though. What
No audio. No, keep the audio off!
All right, no audio.
Just keep the audio off.
Mm.
This is going to be like, you've been demonetized because you stole music from somebody.
Is that Kevin making out
Yeah.
with a guy?
That's totally Kevin
He was
making out
filming
with a
himself making out with a guy?
guy. That's
Hey, I
McCurdy's
s-
wife.
I spot your wife.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's almost like McCurdy doesn't even need me to edit it.
Yeah, it's already edited.
It's already, it's done.
It's done? No.
10 days of work, and just this is a very abstract.
I won't say
It's
anything.
McCurdy's babies.
Oh, okay.
What were you
Charlie
going to
will.
say, Nance?
I was
You're
going to
like,
say
I'm
what
not
Charlie
gonna
just said, but I didn't know about protecting their...
He put him in a movie. He's already abusing them.
They're already in there, They're already... Here, I'll play it.
Yeah.
I'll play it one more time. It's very short. I'll play it again.
Okay.
Play it again.
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh,
There's no music. There is music on this, but we didn't want to demonetize because I just used
yeah,
somebody else's
Huevos,
song for
can you
this.
just quick rap over this? Just freestyle. So we have some audio. I can't remember who that is. Who's the blue-haired chick? I'll pay myself and also be your first method actor. SB showing up a drunk
Why not grapes?
drunk Bond fan with an AI girlfriend. Super method.
It looks really good. Like, color-wise and shot-wise and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Grapes.
Grapes.
It's gonna be fun. I'm
So,
gonna be living with it for a long while.
Was that those guys' first time
Oh, but
kissing
he
too?
spelled my name wrong. He spelled my damn name wrong. But do you? What do you expect coming from McCurdy? So
I
Wait, I
spell
want to see
everybody's name wrong.
the
I should just
misspelled name.
purposely spell everyone's name wrong.
yeah, right.
I had an extra E because I just in my head.
Where
it looks
even
better
is it?
that
Oh, at
way.
the very end.
It looks better
You
with an
always
extra
do.
E.
Well,
Come on, guys.
that's Charlie's family's fault for spelling it weird.
Yeah, I know it's stupid.
You
should
think
add
you
that
think
E in there?
we spell it weird? That looks weird. That is weird. We during World
No,
War
it's
II,
more
we shed the
symmetrical.
really
It's better.
Germanic looking last name because we're goddamn patriots. Okay, separating
okay.
ourselves from the Third Reich. Understood?
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Okay.
how you guys doing?
Anyway, we're doing
Good.
okay. All right.
That's good. That's good. Did you guys ever admire my dead things on the wall? I haven't had dead things on the wall.
Oh,
in a
those are
while.
taxidermy?
Those are dead
I noticed
things,
them
yeah.
and then was trying to
you-
remember where you are.
Yeah, are you at a motel someplace?
the
off of
soundproof
Route
room in
66
the-
in Arizona?
nice-
This,
Nicer
this is a soundproof room at the cottage. It is soundproof.
okay.
That's why I'm here, so I can scream about Insidious 5 with no
gonna
repercussions.
Scream
Surely
about
that
it?
door's not soundproof.
I didn't
though.
Well,
hate it that
you know,
much.
I'm gonna you know.
Oh,
I don't
got
wake
it.
up
Okay, cool.
babies. Yeah, you never know.
Got it.
When I'm done. Were you
All
scared?
right, let's do this review. Let's hear about this movie.
Let's get
Were you
this over
scared?
with.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Not too often am I in the same boat, but I is. Let me kick it. Let me kick it here, fellas.
Kicking it.
My MacBook Air is a piece of shit for live streaming. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
Get
I
a
mean
MacBook
all
Pro
Apple
if you're gonna do
products
this
really,
stuff.
but whatever.
Oh, come off it.
Shut up. Shut up with your green
Fucking-
text.
Speaking of the Third Reich,
Speaking of your
Anyway.
green text.
yeah. No, weren't we talking about that in the
Yeah,
in the
I saw you
Discord
guys like
about-
complaining about women can't women who don't. I mean, yeah, well, get an iPhone. Quit being
Yeah.
a
Anybody watching this,
quit
if
being
you're
a
not in the
cheap fuck.
Discord, get in the Discord. All we do is just talk shit all day. Somebody posted something about women breaking up with men because they have green text on their phone.
And I was like, yeah,
Like
don't
they don't
be
have
cheap.
iMessage. It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
Don't be cheap.
do you not know women? Do you not know how picky women can be?
Here's the thing. I will tell you this. Besides dating on film sets, I've had 80s who won't hire PAs because they have green text. Because it's an
Yeah.
annoyance. Because they're like, I don't want to
Yeah.
deal with it. We're gonna get
Yeah.
iPhones. We're all gonna have blue text. We're all gonna add people and take
That's
people
the
off the
stupidest
chats.
thing I've ever heard of.
It is cold communication.
Nance,
It is like
Nance,
this.
you have no
Nance,
you have no idea how much of a pain in the ass you are because of
is
your fucking
so-
green text.
You're right.
Is there
I
anything else to it
sympathize.
besides the color?
No, it's not
Yeah.
the color. It's the fact that group messages suck. They just
Yeah,
suck
it's the
when you
worst.
only have green. When you have
so every time I
when
do
you
a
don't have
new
everybody
job,
having an Apple, but it
Right,
is
if
Apple's
I do a
fault.
new
'Cause you're like
job-
Apple, just make it.
Yeah, it's not
just-
me, it's
why
Apple.
can't you just? It's Apple, but Apple runs the show, so it is your fault. Like it's just like Apple's God, and you're like, why God? Why?
I'm
it
so
doesn't matter.
sorry
We're
that
God.
you want to suck the biggest
Repent.
tech dick out there, and I want to
Repent.
suck a smaller one.
You are an infidel. You fucking Third Reich.
all right. Let's
Mac,
let's,
no,
let's-
not Mac. Windows worshiping piece
Huevos,
of
I'm on
shit.
PC.
I'm just saying this because right now I'm bigger than you in the screen, so it looks like I'm dominating you with. Anyway, oh my god,
I love this picture.
everything's all messed up now.
let's
Go
check
back.
the minutes.
There we go. Okay.
Oh, hold on.
Anyway,
I'll remove it. It's all good.
Fellas, are you ready to talk about Insidious 5?
I
I
guess.
thought was
All right.
Insidious 3. Every time I say
God.
Insidious, okay. Speaking of,
Every time I say Insidious, Siri,
Wow, Apple is so great.
get out of here.
Oh, it's probably because it sounds like you
Insid-
said something that sound.
Insidious
I think
sounds like
I'm saying, yeah, I think I'm saying the
Siri?
other thing. Yeah, I don't even want to say it because she's gonna yell at me again. Anyway, okay, so charge your lanterns and fill up your fog machines because Insidious is back. Once again, people wander around in the Legend of Zelda's Dark World so things can jump out at them. Only this time we revisit the original characters, but the same old themes of memory and trauma and how it's actually best not to forget the bad things that happened to us because it is those negative experiences that actually make us wiser and stronger. In fact, it kind of highlights how stupid the ending of the film film 2 is, because if the father and son leads were smart enough to not have had their memories wiped, we wouldn't have to watch this follow-up about them remembering that they had their memories wiped so they could return to a red door in purgatory and slam it in the face of some Darth Maul-looking demon that's been chasing everyone for 5 films. These Insidious movies consist of parts 1 and 2 that are basically one complete and compelling story, and everything that has come after has been a loose plot that acts as an excuse to showcase jump scares. No wonder James Wan bailed on the director's chair after the first 2. I'm going to count backwards from 5, and hopefully we'll all forget about Insidious 3, 4, and 5. 4, 3. McCurdy, though. Oh, no, both of you. You guys have seen only 1 and 2?
I
haven't
watched
Or maybe like nothing?
synopsises of the other
s-
movies. I'm pretty sure I saw 1, probably 2, did not see 3 or 4.
I never saw
Okay.
any of them. I started
I
watching
remember
one.
liking them.
I started watching
I
one the
like
other
1 and
day,
2.
and I hadn't finished it.
Anything
I like
I
1
haven't
and 2
finished
a whole lot, but 3, 4, and 5 are just difficult to get
because
through.
1,
There are good
2, and
parts.
5 all have Patrick Wilson and what's her face,
Roseburn and
Roseburn,
you know,
yeah.
all the
3 and
yeah.
4 are just like throwaway, use the
They're
name
prequels.
movies.
They're
Well,
prequels.
the prequel. Hold on. Let's go ahead and just get into it. Let's just talk
Go
about
ahead.
the stuff real quick, guys. Let's just talk about there. Let's get ranked. Let's get ranked, shall we?
You get fucked.
You know, Huevos, I need a new photo. I need
Yeah.
a new photo.
Yeah.
I need a new one. Okay.
New photo.
Get me
how about
a better photo.
Get a mug and sip some coffee
Yes.
and look sexy while you do it.
SB, you want to be in my movie? I need to see your face.
Show us your
Photo.
face.
And buy our merch. Tell your friends. I was gonna buy our merch today. So
Go ahead and move on.
moving on.
I assume everyone in your
Insidious.
movie wears the same sweatshirt,
The, same
the ranked
sweatshirt.
sweatshirt throughout
Absolutely,
the movie.
of course. Like
If only.
that's the whole thing. Hold on, my wife's
Yeah.
wifey's text. Okay, never mind. It was like she was texting me about this because sometimes she does that. She came downstairs one time. She's like, "Your computer's flickering. Your computer's it's flickering." Someone's astral projecting. Somebody's astral projecting downstairs and knocking shit off the walls. Okay.
Dalton
or the
Insidious
show
the
just
Red
ran out of
Door.
money. This is like the cheapest looking show all of a sudden. But
It's called, Insidious the Red Door, directed by Patrick Wilson, screenplay by Scott Teems, story by Lee Wanhell and Scott Teems, produced by Jason Bloom, Oren Pele, God damn it, James Wan, and Lee Wanhell. So I've never actually, hold on, here we go. Okay, so I have never actually watched any of these films before. This one, and I honestly didn't know this was the 5th. But for those that don't know anything about these films, they are not in chronological order. No, I like the Conjuring films. Like, I don't dislike.
That's what everyone's.
I don't dislike it. Yeah. So not in
Everyone gets this
chronological
and the
order.
Conjuring mixed up.
Much like Star Wars and Fast and the Furious series, the first and second films, Insidious 2010, Insidious Chapter 2 2013, are actually the third and fourth films, and the third and fourth films, Insidious Chapter 3, came out in 2015, and Insidious The Last Key came out in 2018, are really the first and second. Mainly this is due to the swapping of the main characters from the Lambert family in 1 and 2 for Lynn Shay's Ellis Rayner and her team of paranormal investigators, Specs and Tucker. But spoilers, that character gets choked out and dies in the first. So to continue the story, they could only go back. Franchise sort of became another Conjuring series, like a darker, grounded Ghostbusters. But with this film, they decided to come back to the original family, who cast has mostly grown up after 13 or so years. I'll leave it to Chucky Rance, who binged all the films, to fill in questions for you, Nans. I want to watch all these films and rank them all when we get there. So, yeah. I didn't.
We'll do this, then maybe we'll get around to the Indiana Jones movies.
Maybe at some point we'll get there.
But first, the Mighty Duck movies also.
Absolutely, yes. we can go into Mighty Ducks. I'll just keep moving on. I don't think Charlie has much to say about these movies.
If you guys have questions, but as I said,
I feel like this. I will say this. I think this movie does a great. Like I.
What is the general story? How about that?
All I was going to say was I think this movie, the fifth one, does a great job of filling you in to the gist of what was going on in 1 and 2. So, and me going into the movie, I
wish there was a bit more.
So it was kind of fun because it was like coming in and being like, oh, well, I feel like these characters because I don't have any recollection of what happened.
The further is like the upside down, like the upside or whatever.
Down. Yeah, which I had to double check because I was like, this movie, like I'm like Stranger Things stole from this movie if that's the case, because this movie came out in 2010, and then I'm like,
so many like
I said, The Legend of Zelda had the Dark World. It's not like anybody invented.
It's also
Purgatory.
Poltergeist. Poltergeist does the same. Like Poltergeist almost
Yeah.
has a very similar plot line to the first one, where it's like family deals with some weird stuff. They call in an expert. They do get paranormal investigators and a psychic to come in and try to save the. And it's like it's almost beat for beat the same movie, but like with this added element of like this dark world version of the Further, as they call it in these.
But
films,
in Poltergeist, the whole thing is that I think the little girl entirely disappears, right?
She
just
does,
gone.
yes, yeah.
Whereas in
Right.
Insidious's little twist is, your son went to sleep one night and he woke up. Let's say woke up in a coma. To contradict myself, and at first doctors are like, we don't know what's going on, and then naturally the parents start to move from okay, if science can't explain this, then how about a medium? So they bring in Elise, and she's
the blonde lady,
and she's like, yeah, let me explain to you the world I live in, which is where like I constantly see demons and spirits and all that,
right?
And so the dad, the whole thing is
Patrick
that
Wilson.
after she explains all that, Patrick Wilson is like, okay, this is crazy. All of you need to get the fuck out of my house. And they do. And then the dad starts to come around to, basically looking at the artwork that the kid drew. I can't remember the little boy's name, but he, Dalton, right. Dalton starts to figure maybe they have something correct here. And then it escalates to where it's like, not only does he start to give in to, okay, maybe Elise has it correct. His own mother, his name's Josh. His own mother's like, yeah, when you were the reason your son can do this, the reason your son can project himself into the spirit realm is because he got it from you. You can do that as well. And you did that when you were a little boy. And it was specifically because your mom was worried because this weird demonic old lady looking thing was pursuing you in your dreams. And so we wiped your memory so that you wouldn't remember that you could astral project to protect you. So then, and that's what's so compelling about the first two movies is that unfolding of the story, right? So it just begins with little boy being kind of haunted by ghosts. Then the boy's in a coma, right? An escalation. And then the next escalation is like, dad rejects the adventure. Then dad comes around to it. Then the next escalation is you actually can. You're the one who has to go in and get him because you can astral project into this realm. You got to go save your son. That's why the first one is good.
It's like a superhero learning their powers and how they work.
Well, it sounds like Stranger.
That's
It
interesting.
sounds a lot like Stranger Things.
Fuck
though.
Stranger
like
Things.
But then in this movie, in 5,
I'm
it's
just
like
saying when
the
you
Further's
say all
already
that, I'm like,
established. We just start going in, and it's like, eh. And then there's like time travel warping.
They start to do weird time travel stuff as 3 and 4 go. They start to do time travel, but you're like, okay, is this time travel? Or is this just an excuse to refer to the better movies? Right?
Well, from what I gathered was that from what I was reading, it wasn't necessarily time travel in the sense of like you actually go back in time. It's the idea that your consciousness would go into this other realm, which is the Further, right? Hold on, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And you would go into that other realm, but like time doesn't really matter because a lot of times people will talk about like the afterlife or whatever, and some people say like time doesn't exist in those realms. So essentially, when you go there, you could run into yourself in the past, and it like nothing would be contradicted. You're not in the real world. So the idea would be like, oh yeah, your past self could go in there, and you could communicate with your past self. I wouldn't call that.
And that's
time
all
travel.
done
I would
well.
call that something else. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. The idea.
I think that's in the second one, right? Like they talk about that in the second one.
Yeah, there's no past and future. There's only the present, and then there's like echoes of that in the afterlife. Yes, and in the second movie, they handle it well. In third, my point what I said, that's the third and fourth movies where it's like that's just done to shamelessly refer to the better movies, right? But 1 and 2 is a complete set. So the first one ends with so dad goes in there. Dad realizes he has this power, goes in. Rescues his son because the whole idea is that when you're in this other world, there are entities that see that they're like, you're a living person. I want to possess you because I want to be living. I want to get back to the world of the living. So when you astral project into purgatory, you kind of open a doorway where anybody can come back through. So dad goes in to save his son. At some point, he's like, "Go, son, go! I'm right behind you." And what ends up happening is that the old woman entity who's been haunting him, the dad, his whole life, she actually ends up catching up with him just before he could get back to the real world. So the son comes back, but the dad never comes back. The old woman entity ends up possessing his body. End of first movie, right? Because the end of first movie is that Elise starts to get wise to that in like the last couple minutes of the movie, and she tries to stop him, and he immediately kills her, right? So Elise dies in the first movie when he chokes her out.
That's
and then
the
second
medium?
movie, that's the medium. And then the second movie is all about essentially, so if the first movie was going to save Dalton in the nether, in purgatory, the second movie is all about rescuing dad from purgatory, right? He's trapped in there. Meanwhile, this weird serial killer guy is possessing his body in the real world. The funny thing is this. The funny thing is that, and a lot of horror movies do this, but I'm just going to focus on these. A lot of horror movies do this thing where, what is the motivation for the serial killer guy? Well, it's because when he was a kid and he was a boy, but his mommy wanted a little girl, she forced him to wear dresses and to have a girl name and to be a little girl. Well, it was only 10 years ago that you could do that story. Now, everybody in Hollywood has a little boy that they pretend is a little girl, and we're all supposed to go along with it. And it cracks me the fuck up.
Are you saying we're going to have tons of serial killers in the not too distant future?
No, I would never say that. But the point being that back then, only 10 years ago, you could still tell that story, and it made sense back then. But now we can't tell that story anymore, right? So suddenly these Insidious movies just have nothing to say. Coincidentally, even their any statement they said back at the beginning, they can't make that same statement now because we got to be politically correct towards people who want to abuse their kids and tell their boys.
Well, that's
girls.
like I know you're going on this whole rant about politics, but that's like it's not that.
That's not political. That's not political.
You're making it.
Why is it?
Why
is that political?
Because right when you start going like, well, Hollywood nowadays, you sound like a news channel.
Why
like,
is that political?
Stop.
Why is that political? 10 years ago, you could tell this story about a mom abusing her son, and now,
what I was going to say though is it's not that far removed from like Psycho, and everybody has probably seen. Everybody who's watched a horror movie has seen Psycho. You know what I'm saying? Like I read that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's kind of like taking the Psycho character and taking it a step further and like analyzing why would he do this instead of it being like, oh, I swapped because I was so fixated with my mom. It's like, oh, I was forced to act like a woman. And like we're talking about the entity in the realm, right? We're not talking about we're not talking about Josh, right?
No, dude, I'm not making a political statement. I'm laughing at the difference that 10 years makes so far as storytelling goes, where the whole motivation behind the guy. Okay, so the old woman entity that possesses Josh is
it's not an old woman though. It's an old man.
Not a woman. It's a man who's getting revenge against his mother who abused him by making him wear dresses and to pretend that he was a
serial killer. Right.
And then him becoming a serial killer, whatever. But the idea that it was a woman like a single mom forcing her son to be a girl, which nowadays is considered progressive. 10 years ago, they take that movie and bring it to the present, and everybody would go nuts about it. That's my point. If you think that's political, fuck yourself. That's not a political statement. That's just a reality statement of how far things have come in 10 years. I find it fucking funny. What else do you want to know? Do you want to know how shitty 3 and 4 are?
I
Is
mean,
there
I'm
a
still
reason
curious
to
to
even
see
talk
these
about
days.
3 and 4? It's just
Well,
like
3
1,
and
2, and
4.
5
No,
are
they're
the
basically
connected ones.
so they basically are saying, okay, well, we have these 1 and 2, and we kind of finished the story in 2, or they thought they finished the story in 2, and so then they were like, well, how do we continue the series? It's like, well, let's focus on Elise character and like Tucker and Speck, and like let's make the stories about them going on adventures,
That
basically.
looks
And then
stupid.
when you like, I didn't see those movies, but to me, it sounds like let's just make like another version of The Conjuring, because the Conjuring films are all again directed by James Wan. The
Okay.
Conjuring films
That's why
are,
they're
but
so
again, like
similar.
these guys, James, like let me just get to my next slide. We'll just talk about it on the next slide. So we have James Wan and Lee Whannell. Both these guys, they created this franchise essentially. They have their team that created Saw, and then they also did Dead Silence. But first film was obviously the first 2 films were directed by James Wan, as well as the Conjuring series. And then you have Lee Whannell, who wrote the first 3 Saw. He wrote the first 3 Saw films. Played one of the main characters in the first one. He was Adam in the first film. And then I think he made some appearances in later movies, in like flashbacks and things. Wan and Whannell both were from Australia, went to school together. In 2003 they came out with they made their short film Saw, which would become the basis for the feature film, which debuted the year following in 2004. And basically that's kind of how they steamrolled steamrolled, that's not the word I'm looking for. That's how they started their careers. And then Lay would go on to play the role of Speck, which he does in these films. And then both Wan and Whannell are producers on the Insidious franchise. Whannell, I believe, wrote the third one, and then he also directs the third one. And then they had somebody else direct the last one. But yeah, Wan finished
basically says he created these characters.
Yeah,
like,
he's
he
like
wrote the first
even
one.
though like Wan's, most people think of James Wan when they think of Insidious. He's the more popular name because it's not, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, James Wan. That makes sense. And he was the director on Saw, but Lee Whannell was the one who's kind of more of the brains behind like, oh, this is what the Insidious thing is. So he was, but he didn't,
Whannell
obviously
has
he makes
more
little
of an
guest
influence
appearances
over the all 5. Like he is a part of all 5 with a pen, right? Like it seems like it's his kind of, like he's the showrunner in a sense, and then James Wan is the director. But I would say that James Wan probably saw that the story really was housed in the first 2, and then at that point, any horror franchise that has a hit, they just take it as far as they can for monetary purposes. James Wan's like, yeah, I'll produce it. Like, I'm not going to direct it because nobody's going to give a shit about Insidious Chapter 3 and so on.
But I mean, obviously, and then he was going on to do, I mean, he's now gone on to do bigger and, well, you could say better things.
Hollywood has absorbed him, yes.
Well, but they're still probably collaborators in some capacity. They were both producers on this movie, so sometimes you see the word producer and like they might never show up to set, but again, they might have some input into the final product and be like, oh, we don't want this because this, that, and the other thing. Next we got this is directorial debut by Patrick Wilson. He also plays Josh Lambert. This is his first film. He actually got to start in Broadway. He was on shows like Carousel, The Full Monty in Oklahoma, as well as a bunch of others. And you probably best know him from films such as Hard Candy, 2 DC films, Watchmen and Aquaman. And the later one was also directed by James Wan. But of course, the Conjuring Universe series, he plays Ed Warren of Ed and Lorraine Warren, which are actually based off 2 real people. But that whole bit is like, it's interesting that like he's in that franchise, he plays Ed Warren, and I would venture to say that the character of Lee, was it Ellis, the
Eli,
psychic in this,
her dog's name is Warren. Like there's
dog's name is Warren
like,
in the movie.
Yeah.
So there's obvious like that was influenced by the Warrens. Like basically Ed and Lorraine Warren were like these famous they would call themselves demonologists or exorcists, but they were like the OG ghost hunters of whatever. And they became famous because of Amityville. They became famous a bunch of things. But basically all the Conjuring movies are based off of their adventures, their tales, so to speak. So it's just funny that like he plays Ed Warren in those films, but obviously those films influenced, not the films, but their real life things influenced Insidious, even though he's
Yeah.
also in that franchise. So
Hmm.
that's probably why I think SB said it or somebody said it. It's like I get these two confused, and it's probably because one, Patrick Wilson's in it, and also
Oh,
James
yeah.
Wan directed the first two Conjuring films, and yeah. So there,
And the only key difference is really that it's that in this, the whole idea behind Insidious is the traveling to the spirit realm. That's
Right.
the difference between this and the Conjuring, where Conjuring's
but I would
like,
also say
maybe
that,
there is a
like,
spirit realm, but you can't go
Right.
like in these movies, somebody will go into
Okay.
the spirit realm and they'll pick something up and it's like, oh, it's floating across the room. Well, it's because like their
Right.
spirit is doing it and you see it. Versus Conjuring is all takes place in the real world. There's no going to another place or whatever.
Right. And the Conjuring, I think also with the Conjuring films, like it's more about the Warrens and they kind of focus more on them, where these films, like they're a little, like at least the first two and this one focusing more on the Lamberts. And I think, again, the third and fourth films seem to be like, oh, let's kind of do what Conjuring did, even though that's also a franchise that's sort of connected to this franchise. Kind of weird.
Yeah,
but,
it gives a
weird.
backstory to Elise.
Yeah.
And I swear it's like they realized too late, oh, we fucked up. Maybe we shouldn't have killed her in the first movie.
That was my thought. Yeah.
Yeah, because then we could go off and do all these different adventures with her. But no, instead we got to do prequels, and they give you like what her home life was in the fourth movie. The
Right.
third movie seems like
she goes
maybe
back to her own house, right?
Yeah, and so the third movie's maybe that they thought that they could just do, oh, Insidious can be like a kind of like a serialized thing. Like it could be a different family, a different group of people every time. Just like, Halloween tried to start doing an
Halloween tried to
anthology
do
type
that for
thing,
one, yeah.
and then they quickly reneged on it and was like, no, we're just gonna bring back the original people over and over. And it's too bad. I would love to see them try to branch out, but so they do that in the third one. Maybe the third one wasn't that much of a success. But the more fun stuff is the good elements of 3 and 4 are the Specs, who is Lee Winnell, and his counterpart.
Tucker.
Yeah, they're like, that's kind of
Tucker and Specs.
the fun stuff, even though it's kind of it's kind of goofy, but overall those movies they're more forgettable because it's like, what are these movies about? These movies are about people wandering around in the dark, and it starts to get really boring if you don't know why you're wandering around in the dark, right? Where as opposed to the first movies, it's like you got to go in there and you got to find your son. And as Josh is going through, he's seeing all these weird spirits and how these spirits are kind of reliving horrible moments in their lives, and it's all very creepy. That's the stuff that works. It just doesn't work when you're like, God, it's been 20 minutes of wandering around in the dark. Like, I don't want to be a millennial, but I'm bored.
Right.
Yeah.
That's 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are like, what is the story? And that's what you guys have heard me go on a million times about how, okay, yeah, the story is people wandering around in purgatory. No. In 1 and 2, the story is about this family that's been ripped apart, and about this dad kind of going back to his roots with this truth that his mother hid from him for decades. Blah blah blah. It's a family drama. 3 and 4 get away from that, and in a way that's like, it's just not interesting at the end of the day.
Because they have two different families and stuff, and that. Well, let's hold on. Let's finish all of this, and we'll get into that.
Real quick. You see Elise at the end of 4. Elise is like, it has to do with her abusive father, but her dad was only abusive because he was basically possessed the whole time. Blah blah blah.
Right.
But then at the end of it, it's like the ghost of her mom just runs up to the demon and just goes, "Get away from my daughter," and just like it hits the demon with a lantern, and the demon's like, "No," and you're like, what? How? Wait, can anybody's ghost just like beat up a demon and win? Like, how does what? You know, and that's where it's just less compelling than 1 and 2. And then this one tries to be like an official cap to a trilogy that would be 1, 2, 5. But you just don't. We'll get into why you just don't care as much. But go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. We got Ty Simpkins. He plays Dalton Lampert, and he's grown up, as you can see.
I love to see it. I was actually kind of blown away. I was like, "That's the kid from the first and second movie."
Same kid from the first one. Most I think would remember him from he was in Iron Man 3. He was the kid in Iron Man 3. He was in Jurassic World. People remember Jurassic World. He also had a cameo in Avengers Endgame, and I think people forget that. Like at the very end of that movie, when they're at the funeral, he's there, and people are like, "Who's that guy?" You're like, "Oh, he's from Iron Man 3." Okay, gotcha. But he was older by the time the movie came out. And then, but this is his debut feature film was 3-year-old boy in Spielberg's War of the Worlds, which I've never seen. With Tom.
You haven't seen War of the Worlds? Oh my god. Love that movie.
No.
That's rare. That's rare that
I haven't seen
Nans
that.
would movie shame.
You haven't seen War of the Worlds?
Fuck
No,
you,
I haven't.
Birdie.
I
Sorry.
love that movie.
Sorry, guys. Haven't seen it. Haven't seen it. All right.
Did you meet
Charlie's
him?
favorite.
Because you were on the
Who?
Tomorrow War. Did you meet him?
Who? Ty Simpkins?
Yeah.
No. I don't
Didn't
even
you
remember
work
him
on
in
the Tomorrow
Tomorrow War. I did, but I don't remember him in that.
Oh,
that might be a photo
this
that
photo.
he might be very well. Remember, he was in Jurassic World, so he might have just been going to see Chris Pratt's movie because he's buddies with Chris Pratt. Maybe I don't know.
Sure.
I
You've
don't
never
remember
seen
him
the
in the
Tomorrow
movie.
War?
How dare
Yeah, I
you.
have. I worked on it. I was there. I was there. It was cold, and I didn't like it. I liked it, but
Yeah.
it was cold. It was really loud though too because of all the gunfire. But anyway,
Okay.
moving on. Charlie's favorite character in this movie, because instantly when she was introduced, I was like, "Oh God, Charlie's brain's
Why?
gonna explode."
Why?
Oh, you know why? You know why? Because it's a liberal arts college.
Yeah,
So
but
liberal.
that's
I thought it was a liberal arts college. I will say this: the only thing I did not
that,
like about
that
her
I didn't
character-
care about. That I didn't care about. The only
There
thing
was
that
okay.
stuck
Maybe
out,
you and I agree with this. Then there was one thing that really drove me nuts about her character, and it was later in the movie. Hold on, real quick though. Her name's Sinclair Daniels. This is actually her first film, like her first feature film. She does have roles in CBS's Bull, and then the other show is The Good Fight. But
Okay.
the only thing I was going to say was the one thing that bugged me about her character was like I was on board with her because I was like, oh yeah, okay, she's the fun sidekick character that he can riff off of. So it's not like he's just all broody and moody all the time. And it's some good, like there's some good back and forth between the two. You know, there's that awkward collegeness to it. But the one thing I did not like was when we get to. So there's a point in the movie where he's like, well, I got to astral project because he said something about closing a door. And I got to go back to that frat house. And so they're like, okay, we'll go back to the frat house. And she's like all on board. And she's like, yeah, you can astral project. That's great. And like, she's kind of egging him on. Like, yeah, you should do this. Like, we should do this.
Pissed.
So then and it's a weird thing.
But
like,
dude, but
you've heard
that'll
me say
defend because she died. Like she straight up died.
but she doesn't die. She like lived.
Well, they revive her.
Right,
but
no.
she doesn't.
They
Okay,
revive her.
my point- no, my point
she had to
was-
get mouth to mouth.
I wrote
from
this down. I wrote this
Dick
down.
or whatever. Nick the Dick.
Right. So she goes. They go there, and then of course he astral projects, and then he goes he's like walking around in the dark, and then sure enough finds like the demon comes and grabs her or whatever, and then once they come back and they're leaving, she's like she's going after him saying like, you shouldn't be doing this, you're out of your element. But it's almost like she's saying, you shouldn't be doing this, how dare you think that you should do this. And
But
like,
she's
but
right.
she was like, I know, right? No,
She's
it's not
totally
that.
right.
It's not that.
If he
It's
would have
not that.
remembered, if he would have had any memory of back in the day,
Right.
he wouldn't be fucking around with the red
No,
door.
I'm not. No. I get that. It's not that bothers me. It's the fact that like she goes from like, I'm on board with my buddy, let's go do this, hey, you should do this, to you should never do this. Why would you ever think this
She
is
got
okay?
choked out by a demon. I think that
Charlie,
might
you're not
change your
listening.
mind about
not-
things.
Right. Charlie,
She
you're not
couldn't see the
listening.
demon.
What I'm saying is it would have
No, it's
worked
okay.
better if she starts out like you could have kept that second scene where she left and then she berates him about it and be like, you should never be doing this. If before when she's talking to him, she's like, I don't know, this doesn't seem like a good idea. Like that's what she should have been saying. But instead it's like, I'm totally on board. That was the thing that bothered me. It felt like either a rewrite or because it just felt weird. Like I was just like,
I have a different
somebody
opinion.
should have fixed that.
My opinion
I
is
get
that
what you're saying is like, I get what the idea is like, now she learned her lesson and she shouldn't have done that and all that stuff.
I have a different opinion entirely. I just think that everything regarding that frat should have been deleted. Everything having to do with
he wanted to go talk to the kid that died. For what reason? And
exactly.
It doesn't happen anyway.
I have to. Yeah,
he's still in the dark.
I gotta know what the drunk guy has to say.
He said he closed the door and he's like, maybe because again, like we have to take it for the face value of like he doesn't remember anything from 1 and 2, so he's like a new character basically. He doesn't know any of that knowledge. So
but the
like,
guy said close the door when he was standing in the bathroom. Close the door, and he's like, maybe there's more. Maybe there's more significance. Maybe he means close the red door, and it's like to Nancy's point. It's like I need to go back and know what he has to say. But then he goes back, and he never gets any new information. All they get is that.
So you're saying you're upset that they never. He doesn't actually get the thing, right? But like, I guess the information we learn from that is just like, oh, this is a way more dangerous. Because at first he's doing it, and it's like, oh, like I can just walk around and play this instrument and mess around with her and all that stuff, and it's all good. And he doesn't realize there's demons around walking around. But then they do this thing, and I can't remember. Does he look up that YouTube video before they go do this? Because in that YouTube video, where
she comes in,
right. Is that before they go to the frat house? The second time? Is that before they go to the frat house?
Yes. Because specifically the YouTube video was a there's certain times in this movie where they just give there's scenes that just are there to give cameos to the original people. So the YouTube video is the sidekicks, right? The guys in the Winnell and Tucker wearing their white suits with black ties. And they have a YouTube channel now with it was like 7.65 thousand subscribers as they just talk about ghosts and stuff. And they just talk about astral. That was just there to give a cameo and then to explain what astral projection is. And then
to catch
then
the
they go
audience
to the
up
frat
in the movie.
so that he can. And that's when he sits in a corner and he starts to project. But
wait, back up.
No, because after you keep saying that I hated this character and I want to fucking cover.
I'm not talking about the character. No, I just wanted to ask. No.
But I want to cover off on it because you said right off the bat that I probably hate this character. My only beef with this character is that it was clearly written by a dude because it's like what happens on the first day of college. The perfect, really fun, really upbeat woman walks in the door who's just is all about you. Like right away, I was like, this movie was written by a guy where it's like, what's a guy's number one fantasy? He shows up to college and the first thing that happens is a really cute girl is his roommate. I had her saying that she was like emphasis on liberal. I was like, well, yeah, I went to college. I went to a liberal arts school.
Right.
That's not inaccurate. That doesn't bug me at all. It just sticks out to me that this girl who is really upbeat and she's like perfect. She's like absolutely perfect in every way. In reality, a girl like that usually ends up at some point telling you that her dad molested her. But in movie world, it's like, oh, she's like fucking perfect. This movie must have been written by a guy. That's all I have to say about Sinclair, other than the fact that there was that moment, though, where it was like the frat guy. This movie, for no reason, this movie hated a lot on frat guys, which I don't give a shit. I was never part of a frat. If Scott was here, he'd probably be pissed off.
I wasn't a frat.
But it was like...
I wasn't a frat.
Yeah, you were. There was that moment where the guy was like, maybe you'll stick around long enough for us to drink enough to be attracted to you. And I'm like, dude, she's like... really cute. This it's just,
and he's in
all
a diaper.
The frat stuff was
stupid frat crap.
Yeah, and even that scene where the guy he was like, fraternities are the last place where men can be men. In an actual fraternity, everybody would have cheered. Everybody would have been like, all the guys would have been like, yeah.
Well, that's
So like
that's not
that
what-
was just stupid
yeah, but that
and
was not what was
inaccurate.
going. No. What the point of that scene felt like whoever was writing it, the writer, it felt like
just
the
hates
writer was
frats
basically
or something.
No, it really did feel like he just hated frats because like to me, I was confused.
I thought it was a pretty
first off,
typical.
no, but like okay, let me run through this.
But
What
Nance, it
confused
like
me-
hardly fit this movie though. Like
I liked
it
the idea.
hardly
Hold on,
fit
hold on.
this
I
movie.
liked the idea that because I was like, okay, this is gonna be Insidious in college. Like, okay, cool, whatever. I liked the idea that like it was supposed to demonstrate how different his dad and him were and how separated they were because his dad had different views on paternity life and do all that stuff.
I was wondering what you were
Did I-
doing.
And then
That's
how he's more like I'm
Fraternity
more into
piss and
art.
stuff.
I'm not into fraternities and stuff. The thing though
Yeah.
that I was just like I was confused by the fraternity thing was because at first they go to the fraternity and like there's these guys waiting outside. It's like, do you want a diaper bowl or something? Which
Yeah,
was
do you want to
weird.
eat poop out of this diaper?
You want to eat poop? And he's like, whatever, dude. Like that was his line. He's like, no thanks. And he's like, whatever, dude. Like, okay. But what I thought was weird about that, it was like, okay, first I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, those are the pledges. Those are the
Yeah.
guys that are trying to get into the frat.
Yeah,
They're
but it
putting on these
wasn't the
diapers.
pledge. It was the guy who
It
heads
wasn't-
the house.
And that's what was weird. It was
Yeah.
like, so basically what I
Was
felt
it?
like,
Oh my
okay, so
God.
what
It
yeah,
was
it
Nick the Dick.
Nick the Dick. So that's what
Well,
I
they
got
didn't
really
want to have a
confused.
bunch of extras.
No. I
Yeah.
got really confused when it was like, yeah, because he's going on and it sounded like to me like the idea the writer had was like, what if this frat completely botched the marketing for his frat by creating this baby party where everybody dresses up like babies because that would be fun. And so he's like, welcome back,
So fun.
baby. Because remember, he does that and he's like, welcome back, baby. He puts emphasis on that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so his idea is that this frat guy is so dumb. He doesn't understand that like people don't necessarily find the idea of people dressing up as babies attractive unless you got some weird fetish typically. So I
Yeah.
thought that was just weird and confusing to begin with. So then it got more confusing when I'm like, okay, I assume that the guys handing off the diapers were pledges, being like, oh, we want to be in this frat, but we're we're basically picked on by the rest
That's what
of the
I
frat.
thought was happening.
That's what I thought was happening. But then when he shows up, and I was like, is this a pledge saying all this stuff to them? And then as the movie goes on, I'm like, no, that guy's probably like the president of the frat and was like, this is what you guys need to do. Yeah, we're back to school, baby. And so when Charlie's like saying like, oh yeah, everybody in the school would have been like, yeah, I'd be like, yeah, but it's a party that you have in the beginning of the year to try to get new pledges. And obviously they're bringing girls. So all the girls and the guys are like, what the fuck is this? So it was funny to me that like, it seemed like they were trying to write, like it was almost like this writer had a whole thing against frats and wanted to kind of write that experience into the movie. But I felt like it does detract a little bit from the story. I actually did like the idea of him, of having that element so that Patrick Wilson and Ty could have some kind of weird separation. I just felt like it didn't, like they didn't go full circle with it, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not even
Spectre
finished.
Chair,
No.
like this idea here would have escalated things, but there just wasn't any escalation. There wasn't any. The whole thing was that the guy giving that speech, the whole point of it was that he was like, guys, have a good time, but nobody die. And we quickly realized that it's because the year before or whatever, somebody died of alcohol poisoning because then Dalton sees a ghost puking into a toilet, and then he, in a ridiculously stupid fashion, ends up puking all over Dalton himself. Literally everything having to do with the frat was out of place. And like you said, McCurdy, if it was like, okay, Insidious, but at college, well, then the whole fucking story should have taken place at college, and it should have been about Dalton specifically, and maybe his
Less
dad
about
is on
Josh.
the fringe a little bit. Yeah, less about Josh.
Right.
But
Well, they
instead,
wanted to make
it was
you
like,
could tell they wanted to make this story about dad. It was like a sins of the father type story, like which I even wrote down my notes. I'm like, we've seen
which
this
is what the
earlier
first
in the
fucking
year.
movie is about. Like,
No,
the
no, we
first
see
movie
this
already
today,
covered all this shit.
But this movie, it's like we're gonna add more to that. So he actually meets his dad that he never knew, and he's like a ghost and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, like
Okay, let's talk about that. Why did his dad continue to show up looking like a demon at first? Why was his dad like, bah! You know,
his dad's dead.
yeah, but his
You're
dad.
saying like
later,
you're
his
saying
dad
because-
shows
you're
up
saying in the
looking
logic.
normal.
Right. You're saying in the logic of the movie in itself, he would have showed up as normal because he could have done that at the end.
Like
But,
Elise,
we're
Elise
never-
showed up.
but-
Elise didn't
but it
show up at
seems
the
like-
end being like, ah, like she looked like Elise.
Yeah, but then in the movie itself, it was like I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we need him to look like a demon so that it's a scary thing. But
'Cause
then
it's
later we reveal
Yeah.
it's
Scary
not
movie.
meant to
Which
be
is
that.
fucking
But I like,
stupid
but
and
sometimes
undermines
I
the
like
story.
those. I sometimes like those stories where like I'm gonna pull this example out of my ass. You guys are gonna make fun of me for it, but like Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Okay, guys, bear with me.
Oh,
Bear with
okay.
me.
Okay, what do you have
Okay,
to
bear
say?
with me. In Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island, they go to a zombie island. There's zombies everywhere, and you think, oh, they're the real zombies or the bad guys, whatever. At the end of the story, you find out that the island that they're on is owned by these old French settlers that came hundreds of years ago that are basically witches, and they turn into cat people. And then you learn, oh wait, the zombies were trying to warn us. They're actually the good guys. And like somebody, I think Daphne even says that. She says the zombies,
Yeah,
are
but-
good
but-
guys.
Who gives a shit?
And I
Why does
like
his
that
dad? Why
element.
does his dad look like a zombie then? Why does his dad out of
Dad-
nowhere look like a fucking
know what?
zombie?
I don't know.
Because they wanted to just trick us into thinking that something dark and dire was going on, but really, because at first you're like, who's this guy? And because you guys saw him in the beginning, right? Patrick Wilson is sitting in his car,
There's the that
and
I
his
actually
dad
like
is
that.
that was like
Yeah,
an
he's
It
in
Follows
blurred.
shot. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he's,
like that
blurred in the
too.
background. thought
I
it was
like
cool.
that too. But the whole thing is this, though. You guys know my whole thing with horror movies. Rules. Rules are very important in a fucking horror movie. And the rules are followed in the first two films. And then the rules kind of go out the window. And then
What
in this
rule
movie,
was broken in this one? Because I felt like this had rules to it. I thought this had at least some kind of like.
For
this is what I
example-
thought.
for
hold on, this is
example,
what I
him
thought-
sitting
okay.
in the car, fully awake in the beginning. Why is
Right.
it that his dad throughout the story? Why is it that his dad is able to just break?
Because that would
from the
imply that
spirit
there's a
realm to
door
haunt
open
him?
between the
Where-
further
how
and
does
the
it
real
work in the
world, right?
first film?
Yeah, that'd be
How-
like
hold on.
like somebody would have to be asleep and astral projecting for somebody from the spirit realm to break
Right.
into the real world.
But how do we
Elise does
know-
it, and his dad does it. How are they doing it unless
Hold on,
the
my question
fucking
is-
screenwriter is lazy?
Hold on, my question is
Maybe
that
in
doesn't
death
in
you
the
can
first
still
two
do it?
films isn't there creepy stuff that happens, but they don't like. There's creepy stuff that happens in the first
Yeah,
two
like,
films, but they're not
Rose
astral
Byrne's
projecting.
even
So
sees
that
stuff,
doesn't
right?
bother me. Like even in the first, I think wasn't it the first film where like the guy's taking photos and he sees the ghost or something?
It's
it's
because
not only-
Dalton,
That happens all the
Dalton
time.
is asleep the whole fucking movie. So it's like Dalton is causing the haunting. Dalton being asleep is a gateway for all these ghosts to start coming.
But
into
then
the real
also,
world.
hold on, but
That's why
Charlie,
it
didn't we
works.
also establish in the second one that like they can time travel, right? We established that.
I have
right?
a quick question. Can anyone
Yeah.
like
So we
do you
established
have
at
to have
least
the
that there's
astral
an idea
projection
that his
powers
dad may have
be
kind of
able
been
to
warning
see
him and
that
trying to be like, sorry, Nance,
No,
what did you say?
but his dad would be invisible though. You wouldn't be able to see his dad.
But
does
he's
Rose
got
Byrne's
astral
character
projection
ever
powers.
see people?
It does that like I know you're saying that rule broke something, but I'm like it really didn't bother me.
Okay, that
got the
I could
context of
accept
where
where it's like
going. It was-
Elise has
that to me felt
powers.
like a nitpick.
His dad
There's,
has
like,
powers.
enough
Elise
there to be like,
has
I think
powers.
it worked.
That could work. Yeah, but like,
Can
why
only
did his
astral
dad never
projectors
show up?
see-
Why didn't his
the
dad
demons?
show
Dad
up
had-
in the first movie to warn him to not hide his power so he would save
Right,
his
but
son
you
better?
know, what are you gonna do?
Exactly.
What are you gonna do?
like,
what are you gonna
like
do?
what are you gonna do?
I
What
didn't-
are
it
you
didn't
gonna
ruin
do?
the movie
You're
experience.
gonna not
The thing
make
is,
3,
it
4, and
didn't ruin
5.
the
You're just gonna
experience
make
for
2 movies and be done.
To
And then
harping
try
on stuff
harder
that I
at
don't
3.
think matters. Anyway,
Here-
I'm not
here's a
finished.
Basic movie question.
Actually, I really don't give a shit.
When it
I-
says
doesn't matter.
Patrick Wilson is directing this movie, what does that actually mean? Like he doesn't
It
have
means
so much creative control, does he?
yes,
Like
he has a
someone
lot of
hands him
creative
a
controls.
script and says, "Here you
This is
go,
like
film it."
Nance, let me
Oh my
let me
god,
break it down
Nance,
to you.
that's a can of that is a
Nance,
that's like a 2-hour can of worms.
Where's my
Well,
That's like a
cover it
6-hour.
in beer.
Okay, here,
2 minutes.
here.
Nance.
Just go ahead, McCurdy.
As a director, you have a lot like a director on a television show, not as much control because the creative producers, the
But what happens a lot of the time is like a series like this. Patrick Wilson has been in 2-3 movies.
He has a
and he's
lot of
like,
control over the
Can
film.
I just direct this one? And they're like, whatever, sure.
Right. He has a lot of control over the movie as far as the choice decisions made creatively. Like basically what a director does is one, he's going to coach the actors and how he wants them to portray what's on the page. So the actors will give their performance, he's going to give their notes. He's going to say, do it a little bit more like this, don't do this, blah blah blah. So that's part of his role. But the other part of it is like he's going to make the decisions on like what are we going to see. So earlier today, you saw my shot. You saw the trailer that I had. I made those decisions as far as what we were going to look at. Now, the director of photography is going to figure out how to make that look the fucking best it can be. But generally speaking, when it's the director, they're going to choose like, I want to see this shot at this angle, and I want to see his look to this, and I want it like he
maybe in the script it says Kevra runs down the stairs.
Interprets
you
the
as
script.
the director
Essentially,
are like, I'm going to shoot it top down.
Right.
Kind of
right. Because anybody, you can hand a script to a bunch of different people. I could have I could have a script, Charlie could have a script, and you could have a script. And it's the same script. We say, all right, go out and make your movie. Okay. We come back. Our movies are going to look completely different as far as the way they're shot. They might not look exactly the same. The blocking is going to be different. Like those are the kinds of things he has control over. So he does have a lot of control. But let me ask you this. What is the question behind the question as far as how much Patrick Wilson has control?
Well, I guess this would be a question for Charlie since you haven't seen the other Insidious movies, but I wonder how different this one feels in editing or direction compared to the first and second one.
I think
just general look or
that'll be a Charlie question because I didn't see the other ones, but I did watch kind of the clips of it. And I will say that like watching the stuff that I saw of the first one, I thought the first one just overall looked better. And I feel like it's a little more, it was just better directed. Like when we're doing the James Bond stuff or any of these other movies and we're talking about like the direction of the film, like you can tell when, oh, this director had more of a visual sense or an idea of what the story was going to be or had a better grasp on the material than some other director did. And
how did this compare to the first?
You can tell.
My initial thought watching the first 10 minutes was because I remember seeing Patrick Wilson, directed by Patrick Wilson, and that was a surprise to me. I was like, oh, because that's usually what happens as a franchise goes on. Even with TV shows, they start to go, okay, let's open the door to somebody else. Let's pass the torch. Like we saw with Creed 3, Michael B. Jordan directed Creed 3, which is pretty cool. You can tell a difference, though. And that's what the reason they do it with movies like this is to give them an opportunity so that hopefully down the road they can maybe make something even better.
Does the studio still have big control though? Like it still needs to be in this language, but you are the one.
Well, I think Jason Blum, who's the head of Blumhouse, like he's probably going to have some kind of control. But like it depends. Like if it's a major franchise, like any of the Marvel films, like Kevin Feige and Disney, they're going to have a lot more say into like cast. They might have say on casting. They might have say on like the movie's got to be a certain length. They might say, oh, we don't like this thing in the script, change it because it says this or that, and we don't want people to have that message. Or they might, it just depends. Or there might be like, we want this to appeal to a certain audience. This doesn't appeal to anybody right now. Like change this, add this character, do those things. Those are the types of things they might change. I don't know about with this movie, like if that was necessarily the case. I do feel like a lot of this,
it's like anything else.
It felt like first movie.
It's like anything else. If you're depending on who you're hired by for any given job, they're either going to completely micromanage everything you do, or they're going to leave it up to you for what you want to do. So my thought with this movie, and honestly, as the Insidious movies go on, they do start to just become jump scare movies where there's an expectation set up, right? So there's a scene in the fourth movie where Elise is in a narrow air duct, and she finds all these suitcases because this serial killing entity that possessed her dad would find a young woman and chain her in the basement, and then go down and torture her, like beat her with a cane. and then ultimately kill her, and then put her remains into a suitcase, right? So she finds all these suitcases lodged in like a little air duct, and she's opening them one by one. And jump scares start to have expectations built, right? So you can see kind of the evolution of them, where what happens is she opens up a suitcase.
I know something's coming.
And you know that the moment that the suitcase closes, there's going to be there's going to be a demon screaming in your face. So everybody's ready for it. They're ready for it. But this is the fourth movie, right? So she shuts the case and there's nothing there. It's just the tunnel, right? And she looks down the tunnel and she looks behind her and she still doesn't see that demon. So she opens up the next case. And you're expecting at some point, and as with all jump scare movies, that if there's like a void, if you're looking into the void, eventually you're going to see something, and there's going to be a loud noise, and you're going to be annoyed. And so, but what they do is, because it's the fourth movie, and they know that you're expecting that, they wait until she opens the last case. And inside the case, a fucking demon pops out of the case. Ah! You know, and that's what I mean. That's why 3 and 4 just start to become like goofy Bond movies, right? They just start to acknowledge in a meta sense that you already know what's going to happen. So Patrick Wilson does it in this movie where, remember, he's playing that memory game.
Yep.
And you expect him to, he's flipping up pieces of cardboard on a window.
You expect to see that guy's face in the window pane or something.
Yeah. But instead, he crashes through the fucking window. Yeah, I laughed. I'm the only guy in the theater laughing my ass off because I'm like, oh, this is meta. This is like postmodern. They expected an audience to know that lifting it up would reveal a face. So instead, we're going to catch them off guard by having the ghost, who is his dad, crash through the window, chase him upstairs, and then look like a demon. And it was all for a purpose, because he ended up pummeling him into the closet to point him to the photos of the old woman haunting him in the past. But it's like, if you're listening to what I'm saying and you don't understand the context, it sounds fucking stupid. And guess what? It is. It's fucking stupid.
I like the beginning, though, when he's leaving his mom's funeral and you see him in the... And
that was good because we didn't know what was happening at the time. So it was subtle,
I liked
but
him
as it
in
went
the
on, it's like, hey, Dad,
or whatever.
Hey, Dad,
cool.
Just show up, just like Elise did at the end. And Elise is like, hey, your mom's going to talk to you soon. Hey, Dad, just fucking walk up to me and be like, hey, I'm a ghost. And this is what you need to rescue your son from the red door. But no,
he was
it's a
trying.
movie,
He
so
kept
we have
trying.
to exactly.
Eventually, he had to burst through a window.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what was holding him back? It's just stupid. At the end of the day, you're like, there's no logic to this. And I get it. I'm a broken record when it comes to rules in horror movies, but we need rules specifically because if you don't have rules, everything's random. This is a movie that was just set on fucking random. So is 3, so is 4. 1 and 2 follow rules, and they're good movies because at the end of the day, it's not about the supernatural stuff. It's about this family. And you care about going into this fucking purgatory to find this boy, and then later going in to find Dad. This series was done after 2, 3, 4, 5 have nothing new to provide, and that's why they just suck. They just fucking suck.
I'll react to what McCready just put on here. It sounds like I didn't hate it as much as Charlie, but it did fall pretty flat.
I felt bored. I was just bored. Like, there was a moment where I'm just like, I'm watching the movie. Like, maybe it's just because maybe it's because I finished a movie, right? And I'm just watching it. And I'm like, oh, how did they shoot this scene? How do they light this? Oh, okay. Like, I was literally doing that the entire movie, and I was just like, oh, okay.
For me, it got to a point where it was just like, it went scene to scene. How do we set up a jump scare? Next scene, how do we set up the next jump scare? Next scene, how do we set up the next jump scare? And
then some of those jump scares,
where's
I was
the
like,
story?
okay,
what is this wrapped around?
Yeah, there's no story.
I mean, here's the thing. I didn't. I thought it. I felt like it had a good enough story, but again, I didn't see 1 and 2, so my reaction is not like,
It wasn't clear
oh,
enough.
1 and 2 is like for me, it was like,
Wait,
okay,
wait,
I
wait,
get
wait, wait,
it.
wait, hang on. You did not see 1 and 2? You haven't seen
I
any
didn't
of
see
them?
I hadn't seen 1 and 2 yet.
Oh,
So from
dude,
my
just- yeah,
perspective, not
okay.
seeing 1 and 2,
This all makes
though,
sense then.
right. But I'm saying not seeing 1 and 2.
I've seen
the
1 and
movie
2, and
fills you
this
in
didn't
enough-
make sense. So
I felt like the movie filled in enough gaps where I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get what's going on. So I didn't feel confused. I wasn't super confused. I just understood that like there was some weird stuff.
There's a big difference
I didn't
between
realize that they
I kind of get
I
what's
didn't
going on
realize that
and
they had
clear
abilities.
rules.
I didn't realize that they had abilities right away. Like I was like, oh, okay. So he actually had this ability to astral project. When you do this, like you're in a realm that you could be in danger, essentially very similar to Stranger Things, where she does the same thing, but she doesn't realize she goes the upside down. And when she does that, the demons will come
Yeah,
after her.
and I thought
Like,
it
it's
was
very
kind of
similar.
clever to have.
It felt like I'm just saying it felt like Stranger Things
hypnotize them
obviously
into forgetting
stole from
that, and then they
Insidious.
rediscover it.
But,
Like,
okay,
it's
so-
kind of a cool idea, but
So real quick, Nance, on that note specifically, as I said in my opener, it was like a closer, right? On this, the second movie was all was said and done. It was big happy ending. It was like, now we're gonna have you guys forget. We're gonna hypnotize you into forgetting that the events of the first 2 movies ever happened, because if you remember, then you'll have the ability to project, and we need to stop that. Well, that's fucking stupid in the long run, because they did it the first time they did it was when Josh was a kid, and they did it so that he would stop projecting. But what we see in this movie is the effect of wiping somebody's memory, which is eventually they go, wow, I have the ability to do this thing. I can project into this weird spirit realm. I'm going to go further and further, and I'm going to find the red door, So it's like, it really makes the ending of 2 seem really stupid, because all of a sudden, if you wipe their memory, they just end up doing the same thing again, which gives you a good excuse as a producer of a film series to make a sequel.
anytime someone counts down from 10
and
to 1,
uninteresting.
they enter the further, and they're like, wait a minute.
Hey,
do
look,
wonder,
hey, I
though-
did this cool thing. I could go to see my old roommate, and I could touch her vagina while she's asleep. This is great. But it's
Demons are
stupid.
coming out.
Oh no,
I did
demons are
feel
chasing me. I'll go to the
I
red
do
door, and then
wonder-
the exact same. So McCurdy, the same fucking thing happens. He Remember when he was chained up? When he had that thing around his ankle? He had that chain around his ankle.
You're saying
That's-
something else.
That's what the first
Some
movie
college
is. Is
stuff.
that the Darth Maul demon has him chained up as he listens to "Tiptoes Through the Tulips," which is like the creepiest song ever made, and that's why they play it. But the whole thing is like, that's what happened in the first movie, and then the same thing happens here. So basically, they're just recreating the first movie,
Yeah.
but Dalton is older now, and like, okay, if you ask me, what would have been better? I'd have preferred them both just getting stuck together again. So the whole movie is that Dalton's just kind of an asshole now. He's pulling the rebellious, like, I think I've said before, like even in Pope's Exorcist, one of my least favorite story arcs is the rebellious kid. I understand the importance of it, and it is an eternal trope, so I get it. It's like a story begins, and it's like a teenager's like, yeah, whatever, mom and dad, and they blow a bubblegum bubble, and they're like, you adults are stupid. I know better than you. Like, I get it, rebelling, teenage rebellion, eternal trope, right? But it's annoying. I don't like them. I don't necessarily
annoying.
like those stories, but I understand why they exist. So I'd have preferred them both just getting stuck together again in the nether, right? Trapped, so they would have to reconcile. Like you have father and son who don't see eye to eye, and they don't know they have this ability, and it almost would have made sense if both of them had been trapped in the nether at the same time, and so they're
they
forced
just bump into
together.
each other in the nether.
They're,
Hey,
no,
what are
they're
you
just
doing
like
here?
they're forced together. It's like we're both in a fucking coma. We're forced to solve this problem together. We have to get out of here together. We have to run away from demons and ghosts together, even though we fucking hate each other. That would have made more sense. Or the two of them having to work together to save mom or to save somebody, right? That would have been a better story of father and son reconciling versus what we got was like dad's discovering the ability again and he's discovering it again. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, and this is what I mean by rules. In the first movie, the whole thing was localized. It was only in one house. So anybody was astral projecting, it was just in one house. But this is like he's off to college and dad is somewhere else. And so at some point, dad astral projects and like I guess he just like spiritually ran for like a day. Like he ran all the way to the college and then he like met up with Dalton at the college and then found the red door too. But where's the red door? Like everything sucks in this movie so far as it's no longer just a singular location. It's kind of all over the place. That's what I mean. There are no rules in this movie to the point where not only is it like geographically fucked, but to the point where at some point they find the red door. And I don't think Dalton ever found the red door, right? Suddenly he was just in the red door, which was kind of a disappointment. I expected that glorious moment where Dalton finds the red door and we're like, don't go in. Don't go in the red door. But we didn't get that, right? I mean, right? Did I fall asleep? Because
No.
suddenly he's just inside the red door. Right. And so, again, what I expected was Dalton to find it. We're like, don't go in there because we know there's a demon there. Don't go in there. But instead, the movie doesn't give us that. He just wakes up and he's inside the red door with the creepy Darth Maul demon. And then his dad shows up out of nowhere, who also didn't cross into the red door. He's just there, and he gets him out. And they run out and they get outside the red door. And then the dad decides to hold back the red door. He's like, I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold it back and you're going to run away. And then what does Dalton do? Dalton goes back to his dorm room in the real world and he starts painting over the drawing he made. And so his dad's like, good boy. He's painting.
Hurry
like
up
suddenly
and paint faster, Jesus.
paint in the astral plane. The red door starts to get covered over with paint, and it's like, what? Okay, wait. What fucking rule says that in the real world you can just pretend and imagine that the red door is getting covered in paint and it's going to happen for real? This movie is fucking stupid and it's too abstract. And it has nothing to say about these characters, and I wish he would die.
They just text each other like, "Hey,
hey,
I made it.
Love you too." But that's what I mean. It's like whoever said that you could just paint over. Okay, so Dalton drew a rendition of the red door, and by painting over it, he could affect the purgatory red door. Like it's too abstract. It's too abstract to be taken seriously. The first two movies didn't suffer from that. They actually had rules and they followed the fucking rules.
But what did
horror
McCurdy
movies need fucking
think?
rules?
McCurdy loved it. He was texting me earlier. Right when he got out of the theater, he was like, this might be the top of the list.
I never said that. Never said that, but no, my
okay.
Charlie, I know your annoyance again. This is like it's like harping back on Scream 6 because your annoyance was they didn't have rules, and I do like a little bit of abstraction because I don't think even in our real world we understand the spirit.
Depends.
Hold on, I don't think in the real world we don't always know what's like out there as far as the thing. So I do like a little bit of mystery, but and it didn't bother me as much as you did.
But you're gonna defeat the bad guy by painting over a painting with red.
All right,
that's what you're gonna do. That's what you're gonna do. Wait. Ah! Were you scared?
Okay.
Were you scared? That's
I was
what we're
trying
here
to
for.
talk, but you keep interrupting me with stuff. I'm trying to tell you the exact same thing. Yeah, when you talk about the pain thing, it does make sense. Where it's like, yeah, you're adding the pain thing more and more, and it's like, okay, well, I don't understand why that works, but okay, I guess I'll follow it. I mean, my reaction after leaving the theater, I was like, it was okay. I didn't love it. My biggest complaint though is after I was thought about it, I was like, this movie doesn't have any teeth. There's no teeth. It's, and I think while you're saying
just like Scream 6,
right, Scream 6. So like you were saying that like I want rules. My harp thing with horror films is like, if you're gonna make this threat a threat, you need to have the threat do something so that as audience members we know like, oh, they mean business. Like this thing is really dangerous. And there's nobody who dies. Like I was expecting that they would kill off Nick the Dick or
No
kill
one
off
dies anymore.
Kill off Chris or some other character in the movie. They never do that. Like I'm just like, okay. I would have appreciated it if somebody died, or at least because well, we can't kill off Chris because then he doesn't have anything for later. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but that was a little annoying to me. And then I was like,
no.
That also bothered me. It's just
Scream 6. I didn't mention rules for Scream 6.
No, but
I mentioned rules for Evil Dead.
But I said
Evil
6,
Dead.
I felt. Right.
Evil Dead.
So I was saying in Scream 6, that was my biggest gripe, was that like that movie, they don't kill off any main characters, and there's a lot of stabbings and a lot of things of scary sequences. But when you build that up, basically it's like if you build a scary sequence up and you do it enough times where no one's affected by it, like it doesn't do anything, then it's just like, why do I care? There's no stakes there. It's like, why do I care? Yeah. So in this movie, it felt the same way. I was like, it was all about, like you were saying, it's all about the jump scares. It's all about like we gotta scare people. But like, if you're not killing anybody off, if nobody's dying, if there isn't a sacrifice made, why should I give a shit? Like I honestly thought that when I thought Patrick Wilson was gonna get it. Like I thought he was gonna sacrifice himself.
That would have been better.
The door.
And then number 6 could be about saving him, just like 1 and 2.
Sure, they could have done the same thing. But like I thought, like that at least would have led to something where like, oh wow, this actually like
the moment he said, "Son, go run away," I'm gonna hold the red door. Like that was where I was like, okay, if you guys do this right, then I might actually kind of like this movie.
Kind of like the movie,
but then it was. But then it was like, oh, good boy, you're painting over it with your painting. But we never established that by making an abstract rendition of a purgatory item would suddenly affect that item. So it was never like, how about this? Draw a picture of the Darth Maul demon and then rip it in half and it kills the demon. Oh no, that didn't happen.
Why not? Dad and put a rocket launcher in his hand.
Exactly. Like by that logic, then you should be able to kill anybody by drawing them and then voodoo doll style ripping them in half. Which coincidentally, McCurdy, earlier in the movie, there was a whole segment about taking a piece of art and ripping it up to pieces.
Right.
Was there a version of the script where you could do that, where you could draw Darth Maul and then rip it in half and he would die? Maybe, but in the end, it just ended up being for nothing.
The only part of the movie where I'm like, maybe there's like a very vague setup is when he pulls the hammer out of the painting. And that was the only thing I could think of. Like after the fact that I was like, it's a weird dreamy moment where he's like, you're not sure what's going on, and he pulls the hammer out of the painting from the second movie, and I was like, that to me is the only thing that I feel like is an excuse to say, oh, this is set up for later. When
what did he do with it?
Paints it. He pulls it, and then he ends up like he actually brings it into the physical world, and then he ends up in the nether, and then or the further whatever, and he ends up in the further, and then he goes back in time to where the second movie is. And he's like, that's the whole thing, right? The hammer.
He's like, Dad, don't kill me. Don't kill me, Dad. And he tackles his dad. And then all of a sudden, he's locked up behind the red door. Like out of nowhere, he's locked. And that's where it's like,
well, I felt like maybe it was like he got pulled in and he got, it was just like, it felt like, okay, well, did the demon like bring him in? Because one of the other things that this movie plays with is the idea that like, and I feel like it's these movies, was that, his dad goes to get that scan and he gets the scan. And so as the audience member, we're seeing all the scary, spooky stuff happen where the lights go out and then the thing comes
Scary.
crawling up to him. And then he wakes up and he gets out of it. And he's like, oh yeah, that all went fine. You were like a super 15 minutes. And I do like movies that do this. There was another one that came out, I don't know, maybe 10 or so years ago, around the same time as the first Insidious, where I think it was Oculus. It was Oculus. And the thing that movie did was that
I really like Oculus.
the thing that movie did was play with your perception of what was actually going on. Because what would happen is something would happen where the character thought he was fighting somebody, thought he was doing something. And because of the mirror cursing you, he actually found out he was killing his friend or whatever, almost trying to kill his friend. So I thought we were playing with those types of ideas.
What I loved about Oculus was it sets up. The whole setup is like, okay, you and me, little bro, we grew up with this mirror in our house, and this mirror is haunted. And I've set up this whole thing, this whole like, all these gadgets and all these booby traps I've set up so that we can defeat the mirror. And
You're telling me it's
I
Home
remember
Alone
watching
with
it.
demons?
Yes, and I remember watching it, and I remember that
that.
setup occurring and being like that. That was one of the like a rare moment.
Hold on, there was one other thing I was
going
going
to set up. There's a rare moment when a movie is set up, and I'm like, you've set up all the dominoes, and I can't fucking wait to watch them all fall. I cannot recommend Oculus hard enough.
Chucky,
for that.
There's a moment in this movie the Insidious movie, that I thought we were going to get a payoff to. And I do wonder if there was a payoff and they had to change it for whatever reason. But the scene, remember early on when he goes to college, right? And he's like, yeah, mom brought this for you. It's a little hand me generator. It's got, and what does he say? He's like, yeah, it's got jumper cables on it. There's no use to you. He sets it down. And I'm thinking the whole effing movie, I'm like,
jumper cables.
Are they gonna is someone gonna use the jumper cables on somebody? Like, are they gonna try to kill somebody with jumper cables? And then we never see it. And I was like, well, I wish that they never did that. Like, that pissed me off. I was like, I was hoping that we were gonna get some kind of weird jumper cable death, or like they were gonna use it in some kind of way, but we never see that. And I was like, I was annoyed by that. So anyway, you want to go?
So another annoyance.
Oh, you got
would be that. Okay. Another annoyance would be that the whole idea is that in the second movie, at the end of it, it's let's wipe their memory. Let's wipe Dalton and Josh's, father and son's memories, so that they'll no longer astral project, which is stupid in and of itself, because anytime they go to sleep, they might just do it without even knowing, which is the whole point of this movie, which is that they do start astral projecting without knowing it. They discover it again. But what they do for Dad specifically is that because through hypnosis, he had his memory wiped, he suddenly has brain fog. It's like he has a disease because he can't remember stuff. It's like he has really Alzheimer's.
Dalton
or something.
Just dealt with it, I guess.
Which is stupid. Yes, like Dalton's just like, it's like, oh, I don't know, he's so
whatever.
young.
I'm going to go to college.
It's stupid.
I like it's the elements.
It's
that
one
I
of those
things
where
that,
but the thing about it is that it is the type of thing that normally I would say it's the price of admission. You just have to accept that he has brain fog, but there was never anything for it. I would rather had they had the foresight, I bet they would have only wiped Dalton's memory, and they wouldn't have wiped the dad's memory. And it would have been a better movie if they were continuously hiding everything from Dalton, and that would have added to the tension between father and son. Because the whole thing, the whole father and son tension is like, I get it. I've been there. I for years I was at odds with my dad, and I pulled the whole prodigal son thing where my dad and I couldn't be closer now. But when we're separate, I get it. I get that you just are at odds with him, and it would have added to the drama if we as an audience would have known that Dad's memory wasn't wiped, Dalton's memory was wiped, but Dad can't tell him that his memory was wiped. He has to continue the ruse. And we as an audience are like, yeah, you have to continue the ruse. That would have added to this drama. But instead, both their memories were wiped. And what that lended to was that Josh just it's weird because Josh is such a good guy. He's such a nice dude. And then Dalton just hates him for no reason. And meanwhile, Josh is really nice. So it's just it doesn't work because you're like, why does he hate his dad so much? Because his dad is so pleasant. If his dad was a fucking asshole from the get-go, like even at his mom's funeral, he's like, fuck you, you read the Bible wrong, you piece of shit. Shut up. Like it would have made sense. It's like he hates his dad because his dad is kind of an asshole. But instead, the whole time, Josh, the dad, is nice. He's like, I'll do anything for you. I'll drive you and I'll do all these nice things for you. It just didn't work. It didn't work. They didn't have the gift of foresight.
I didn't actually agree with you. But
why?
Here's the reason I didn't quite agree with you, because I did feel like I felt like I get what you're saying as far as Josh is a nice guy and everything. I actually liked the element of them both not knowing, and so then that like they're having a miscommunication between each other because of that. So I actually kind of like that. The one thing I just don't like the payoff of it, because by the time we get to like the mom being like, well, I divorced you and all this stuff, I was like, okay, now it kind of really fell apart. But the thing I liked was, because you were like, oh, he's a nice guy, and I'm like, yeah, but like if you remember the car scene when they're driving to the college, I feel like that was a great example of like a character saying a thing and another character having a different perspective on what he was saying. So like the dad saying something like, well, man, she better be, we're paying this much. Like you can interpret that two different ways. You can interpret it, and I feel like the movie does this, is like he's interpreting like, God damn it, like this, like you're a burden. I'm spending a lot of money on you to get this really good art teacher. You better not fuck this up. Or you can interpret it as like, wow, that's great. Like that was like, man, that we're spending some good money on it kind of thing. So I felt like that scene in itself was like, okay, I see the disconnect between the things, because even though he's saying things and it sounds nice, or at least you're interpreting as like, oh, he's being a nice guy, I feel like as the other character, like I can see where maybe he's interpreting it like, oh, that kind of comes off as kind of an a-hole thing to say, or not really understanding.
I think that's separate though. I think what you're describing, I think, is separate from the idea of dad remembers what happened 10 years ago and Junior
and I see where you're saying, where it's like, I get what you're saying as far as like, oh, well, if he didn't know, then you're adding another layer of conflict, because now the dad can't tell him. But I feel like the reason obviously they didn't know that they were going to do this movie, or they did, and the reason they didn't do a 3 and 4
they obviously did not.
I think I get that. I think there is a possibility. I don't know if this is for true or not. I think there's a possibility that the reason that they didn't continue the story with 3 and 4 is because they realized like, oh, we got 2 kid actors and they're going to grow up and they're probably going to be doing college or doing something else in between this. So it's going to be a while till we get back to this. So we're going to do this other story. I have a feeling it might have been the case. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do have like,
there's no way they had this movie in mind.
SB has a question.
No way.
SB wanted to know what's the difference. Like, so this movie is not that big of a budget compared to other ones. But to answer that question though, on a lot of these movies, and for a fact, I know at least 2 people who worked on this movie, or at least I talked to. I was looking at the credits like, oh, I know that person. And one person I was scrolling through Instagram, and they had worked on it, and they worked on the reshoots of the movie, which I've done so myself. And I asked them a little bit about it, and like they're like, well, what did you do? Like, what was it like? And they're like, well, a lot of it was the end of the movie. And that, for me, that's actually happened. That was happening what I did on another movie that we're going to see this year. I worked on the reshoots, and they had to redo the entire end of the movie. And that's not uncommon. Sometimes they'll schedule that stuff, but sometimes it's might be
common.
And it feels obvious to me watching the movie after the fact, because of all the little things where I was like, something feels like there should have been another scene here, or this feels like it was a part of something else that got clipped and then they changed it or they edited it out. And so you see those little things that happen. But yeah, typically in big budget movies, they'll shoot the movie, they'll finish it. And then the studio might come back, they might test screen it. They might look at it and like, ooh, yeah, it didn't test well. Like we need to tweak some things, add some stuff, change some things. Like it could have been, I don't know if this for a fact. I didn't ask them the details, but it could have been something where like Chris did die. And then maybe audiences didn't like that, so they changed it. It could have been that The dad stayed at the door, and audience didn't like that, so they changed it. So you have no idea what happens, but they'll change like huge chunks of the movie, maybe usually like a third act of the movie.
I didn't like that the dad sacrificed his life for his son. It made me sad. So I think that really good story should be sacrificed for a really bad fucking story. Then they go, okay, the stupidest person in the room, we're gonna abide by their opinion, where they don't like a story.
But then
about
again,
sacrifice,
it could be where they're
uncomfortable.
Right. It could also be where they test screen it. Who knows? There's 100 different things it could be.
I bet the first movie they didn't test it at all, and it just came out as it was, and it made fucking James Wan and Winnell a bunch of money.
But that's the first movie. I mean,
and then it turned into 3, 4, and 5. Oh,
he's got demons. Someone's astral projecting.
Here we go. Put that on like that.
What if Lily could?
My wife texts me, and she's like,
"What if your
Batman signs upside down?" I'm like, "I know, I did that on purpose."
What if your wife could astral project and she's just fucking with you? She's like tipping over your Jack Daniels and shit.
I probably deserve it, you know.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Why don't you astral project and play with my balls? Anyway,
if I did, I'd be like stomping on them. I think you'd like that actually.
Okay, so let's get down to it though, fellas. Let's get down to it.
Let's just talk about it.
90 fucking
talk
minutes.
About brass tacks.
Where do you guys?
I think you're gonna say it's under Pope's Exorcist. That's where I think you're gonna put it.
God, McCurdy, why do you know me?
Because you're an asshole, and you're
how
just
do you
really
know
easy
me
to predict.
so well?
I think it's under Pope's Exorcist, but I do feel like it's a little bit better than Rise of the Beast. And I would here's my thing. I think it's between Pope's Exorcist and Transformers. I think you could probably put it right under Magic Mike, because I do think Magic Mike, even though it has a lot of shortcomings, I think that at least that movie is directed much better with a much more efficient director. I just think it's probably there. Like Transformers, all those movies, Transformers, Knock the Cabin.
Fuck you, SB. Are you in league with Nance? You asshole. What are you, some kind of Third Reich?
I love how it's not only that he says Apple Notes, but he's like Apple Notes from 2008. Like it's just that little bit of a like.
Sadly, this is contemporary. This is contemporary Apple.
That's modern Apple technology.
Yeah.
So, Apple technology. Yeah. Anyway, Charlie.
We must kill off the Jews so we can make room for better technology. You fucking Nazis. Nance, you're a Nazi. SB, you're a fucking Nazi. You're all pieces of shit.
Hey, Chucky. So I feel like it's under Pope's Exorcist based off a lot of the crap you were saying. And I kind of could buy that because I'm like, I didn't actually like leaving theater. I was like, it was fine. Whoa, where did we all go?
There we go.
I thought it was fine. I didn't hate it, but I also was like, it definitely has felt messy.
I didn't leave pissed off.
I wasn't like
I left like all right. I saw that.
It wasn't Knights of the Zodiac.
There was some scenes I liked. I did like when he was in the brain scanner and he was like freaking
But I feel
out.
like I had a better time.
Where are you at?
Man's like Transformers.
Yeah, I like Transformers. I like Knock at the Cabin. I agree with McCurdy. Somewhere in that Pope's Exorcist Transformers range, though.
So I think, but I'm thinking about it more, and I'm like, I might say it's under Transformers, but like, maybe. But Transformers is also a weird mess, but like, at least it's, I don't know, it's a little more entertaining. I don't know. I think maybe right under Magic Mike's probably the best spot, honestly.
Where I'm at, I am. My proposition was below Magic Mike, above, or no. Sorry, below Transformers, above Knock at the Cabin. So I'm at number 26. I would say Transformers was just like a more entertaining movie, whereas this is like a movie that should never have been made. Like this is supposed to round out a trilogy. No.
At least Transformers.
Insidious was 2 movies. Insidious was movies 1 and 2. God damn it, Siri! I'm not talking to you. Get out of here. I say Insidious, and she thinks I'm talking to her. No,
well, if you
shut up.
Stop drinking so much, you slur your words.
Okay. Anyway,
someone's in the Apple further.
I know. Shut up.
Probably
Siri,
all those
bitch. I would say I'm almost tempted to say it's better than Plane. I don't know. The more
He's going lower
okay.
and lower.
Okay, I'm
It's
looking
definitely
at.
better
I'm
than
like,
Cocaine Bear, or no?
okay.
Definitely
McCurdy,
better than
I
Knights
don't
of
think
the
it. I
Zodiac.
think I
It's
feel
not
you
like
at
said
the
we need
Pope's
to-
Exorcist. You
It's
said
not at the
Pope's. You
bottom.
said better than worse than Pope's Exorcist. Yes.
Right.
And then I go Magic Mike, and I go, oh, Magic Mike I think it's definitely better. And I go Transformers. Yeah, even that's better. My
I'm
thought
not
at first
sure.
was Knock at the
I'm
Cabin
not
because I hate Knock at
100%
the
sure.
Cabin so much, but I think I would even put it below Knock at the Cabin. I
Really?
might even put it
Whoa.
below Plane. It's
I
better,
don't know
but
if
it's
it's
better
worse
than
than
Cocaine
Plane.
Bear.
I think Plane. I do feel like it's still better than Plane. I enjoyed it a lot more than Plane.
Plane is so goddamn
It's-
PLAIN.
It is what it is.
It is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I think this
Yeah.
movie at least has those moments, and I think you know what, Charlie. I think putting it next to Plane might be a fitting spot, but I do think it's better than Plane. And the reason is because if you remember, if we go all the way back to January, we were talking about Plane. One of the issues with that movie is it feels like it's not a director by committee, but almost just like a director who wants to try different things, but like doesn't have a cohesiveness to like try to make those things the same throughout the entire film. So like you get this one sequence, this one fight scene that's like he's like, oh man, this is gonna be the best fight scene. It's just gonna be in single take, and it's gonna be all this. It's gonna be great. But it's like we only have the budget to do this one awesome take, so all the other ones are gonna be very generic. And this movie felt like kind of in the same vein where it's like, you know, we have all these really cool jump scare type things because that's what these movies kind of thrive on. But at times it wasn't like, sometimes it was subtle and sometimes it wasn't, we didn't get enough subtle. And so I don't know. Maybe there, I'm having trouble with it because I'm like, I want to say it's a little bit better than these movies because there's our parts of me where I'm like, well, is it better than Transformers? Is it worse than Transformers? Sorry, is it really worse than Transformers?
I think above Plane is easy. How about Knock at the Cabin?
That's where it gets tricky because I feel
I think that's where it's like the story of Knock at the Cabin, I think, is actually better than this recycled story that is trying to essentially trying to recycle the first two movies.
So let me get this straight. The things you're harping about in this movie is that you don't feel like it follows rules. That it needed to have more rules and more clarification on certain things.
And what's the story? What's the purpose of this?
Well, the story is the story about a father and a son rekindling over past trauma.
Could have been done a lot better. That's the whole story.
If you're talking about
like I said,
plot of the movie,
like I said,
that's different.
If the whole story was them being stuck in the Nether together and they had to reconcile, that's automatically a better movie than this, where it's like, my ghost dad is attacking me in my house and jumping through windows and breaking windows. Like everything was stupid. And then the frat, everything having to do with the frat was stupid, as opposed to focusing in on a story. And if James Wan directed it, I guarantee he would have insisted that it would be something like that. But it was Patrick Wilson, who's never directed a movie, and they easily convinced him to just make a stupid fucking movie so that he could.
It wasn't even the same. It was like Lee. What was it? It was yeah. Because I will say this. I don't know how much. It wasn't his script. The guy who wrote the other two. So it wasn't Lee Warnell's script. It's his story. So I have no idea how much input he had as far as the final script goes. So there's a possibility there. I don't know. I sometimes you're like, oh, the better story. I'm like, I don't know. I think the premise of Knock the Cabin's interesting. Right? Like it's like,
I like
versus
it.
this is like it's a recycled thing we've already seen. Yeah, I could probably put it. The more I think about it, you could probably put it under Knock at the Cabin, just because I think really what it comes down to is Knock the Cabin's like a much more interesting premise. I think
it's more original.
Yeah,
I think Knock
at the Cabin,
weird idea. Knock at the Cabin sucks. It fucking sucks, but it's at least original.
Well, like Insidious is so it's so derived from like other source material. Like even the first Insidious feels like Poltergeist with an added element to it. So then it's like, well, now we're gonna water that down even more, guys, with college Insidious, which is basically like sort of Poltergeist, but like not at all, and then a whole other thing, you know. So it's like, I could probably put it down there.
I think that makes sense.
Makes sense. I'm with it if you're with it.
So below Knock at the Cabin, above Plane.
Yeah.
That's
Or
where
knock
I'm
the
at.
cabin above.
Mhm,
Plane.
mhm,
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, I just don't think it's it's not the worst thing. But again, you and Nan's perspective is slightly different than mine because I went into this not seeing the first one, so I didn't hate myself watching this movie like some of the other ones we've seen. But I wasn't like there was stuff that definitely like left sour taste in my mouth. So,
but I do value that perspective though. The fact that you would come in.
I liked. Here's the thing.
Virginally.
I actually wrote that down as like that was something I liked was coming into it and not seeing the other two because you come in it at a different. You're coming in it as an audience member who's seen the other two movies and you're like, well, he already knows what he's doing, you know, like, he already knows all this stuff. You know what do you mean? He's figuring it out. I was like, I get that, but when I came in, I didn't know what happened in 1 and in 2. I just didn't know any of that stuff. So I was very like,
And I had
knew
forgotten
stuff
but
happened. I knew spooky stuff happened. That's all I knew. So when going into this movie, I was like, okay, cool. Like they're both, they don't remember this thing that happened, this trauma that happened. They both don't know. I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting. They're kind of blaming each other
But again,
then,
even then,
I know, but you're saying like even then all the stuff. Yeah,
like,
it's like
let's do this whole frat sequence that's like really stupid.
And I didn't.
With a
and again,
ghost
like,
who
when I watch
pukes on his
movies, I'm not like
face.
sitting there. And I was just sitting there like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but I was like, okay, maybe this is like the movie's going to lean more into the college stuff. Like, are we going to see other like we never? I think the other thing with the college stuff was that we only see 3 college characters as characters throughout the entire movie, even though he goes to a big college. We like remember Chris Dalton. There's like the kids in the art class, and we kind of focus on one for a second as an example, and then there's Nick the Dick. That's it. But nobody else really gets like, hey, you're a character in college. And I'm not saying like the movie had to completely change itself around, but it does feel weird when you're like in this movie where it's like, okay, he's older now. He's living in college. Like the movie could have been like Charlie, what you're suggesting is like dad
could have been
the movie could have been more about Dalton, more about him.
Okay, like, can you imagine?
He doesn't remember anything.
Can you imagine a movie that is just a college movie? It is just it's like dad's dropping you off, but then dad keeps showing up, or like how about this? Mom drops him off, right? Mom drops him off to college, and she's like, "Honey, you should take chances and have a good time." And it's a college movie. And then mom fucks off for the whole movie, and dad starts showing up, and dad's like, demons are haunting your brain. And he's like, oh, fuck you, dad. You're a crazy person. And over time, he starts to realize that his dad actually isn't crazy. His dad actually knows what's going on. No.
I had an ADHD moment. This made me laugh so hard because it's like I think the Flash is too high, but then it's
it's Sally.
It's Sally. I was like, it's too high. I'm like, probably was, but anyway, sorry.
No,
Charlie,
she's great.
You're saying you should have mom and then dad.
The Flash was good, man. The Flash was good, not great. This whole year is good, not great. 2023 is not a good year for movies.
Here's the thing. I would say this. I think this is an experience. Like so far, we're only about halfway through this whole thing, right? We're a little more than halfway. I think that probably every year is like this, and we're just living it. We live in the bubble of not realizing that because we don't like. I've seen more new movies this year than I've ever seen in my entire life because we're seeing a gambit of different films throughout an entire year. This is what it feels like to be a reviewer because you're seeing every trope, every movie. So as one audience member might have been like, oh, I saw that movie. I thought it was great. I'm like, well, what other movies did you see this year? Oh, I saw this one. And then I saw Spider-Man and I saw, hold on. Where's my, I need a hat to be Scott for like 2 minutes. I saw Super Mario Brothers and that was great. You're like, okay, well, did you see Infinity Pool? What's that? Like things like that. You're like, you don't see all the good stuff. You don't see it's like the cream. You don't see the foam on the top. You just see all you're like, it was beer. It tastes good. Anyway, that's my bad analogy is over. Anyway, Cheese Grater's excited about Mission Impossible 7.
Cheese Grater, all we want from you is our animation. Cheese Grater, send us your animation.
Who is he? Is that someone we know?
Cheese Grater said he would send us an animation of James Bond, and we'll promote it. So that's all I got
Okay.
for Cheese
Cool.
Grater. But when it comes to this movie, it really is. It is very low on the list because it is just another shameless sequel that has nothing to say about its own characters, and it's. I feel good about, honestly, below Knock at the Cabin. I think Knock at the Cabin at least has something original to say, even though it's a piece of shit. Plain is just plain. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think you're
Yeah, I'm
drunk.
more with Nico. It's just like the movie just felt bland because again, it just doesn't have any stakes. There's no balls to the movie. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, hey, scary stuff. Anybody gonna die? No, we're gonna have Nick the Dick
Did
bring them
anyone
back to
die?
life.
Did anything
Oh,
happen?
Dad's about to sacrifice himself. Maybe this movie
No.
will be good. No, Dad doesn't sacrifice himself.
Nah, nothing bad happened.
Everything's
Nothing.
okay.
Like I think that's
Nobody
the thing that I
ever
just like I
dies now.
can't stand is that like I can't stand when people are like we talked about this with John Wick, right? Like some people I've met people who like they didn't like John Wick 4. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it, by the way. But they didn't like it because John Wick dies. We don't actually know that if they do a fifth one and it turns out like he didn't actually die, whatever. I don't care. But people hate that. They're like, "Oh my God, he died." I'm like, "Yeah, he had a sacrifice. He lived a good life. He, like things need to have finality to them, or they need to have like a character death, like Indiana Jones. We talked about that last week. They used an off-screen character death, not as just a let's forget about him. They used it as a character thing to move the story forward. I liked that, but like, it just annoys me when they're like, "Oh, we're not going to kill anybody. We're not going to do anything with this scary stuff. It has no teeth. It's just spooky. It's just scary, guys. You're just in a haunted house."
Yeah.
It's not
They
even that
won't
scary.
grab you.
I thought it was. I don't know about your guys' theaters. This is the type of movie where a bunch of annoying teenagers go see it. I didn't experience that in my showing.
I did have my experience.
It went
was more
from
about
teenagers
being in the
only
theater,
watching
but
spooky movies to now teenagers just don't even see any movies now. So
I had a couple sitting next to me the whole time. The theater was actually packed. There were a lot of people in the theater, and there was a guy who was pissed off because I was in his seat by mistake. It was actually a different couple. Well, what happened was there were two people that sat in the first two seats, and then there was another couple that was in the end of it. I was in the middle. And then I find out this guy comes in with his two friends, and he's mad. He's like, "These are our seats," and he's like looking at me, and I looked. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm like in my spot, and I realize I'm just one seat over, and so I just moved. And it turns out these two people were supposed to be in these two seats over here, and the people that were here were not supposed to be there at all. So it was a whole clusterfuck, and the guy was all pissed off. And I was just like, I don't really give a shit. I'm just here to watch a movie, and I was bored to tears, to be honest. So. Teen crowd was dead quiet for this one. Meanwhile, they were hooting and hollering for Megan. Yeah.
I already went and I put Insidious, The Red Door beneath Knock at the Cabin, above Plane. Are you fellas okay with that?
I hate that. How dare you do that? Yes, that's fine.
It looks locked.
Okay.
All the numbers have been updated and everything.
Yeah. Let's just get rid of that. Get back to this. Okay. All right. Fuck
Charlie,
you,
did the cocaine run off? Like, you're just tired now.
I'm just annoyed with like franchises that go on way too long, and it's like, let's try to justify it. No, you can't justify it. It's just fucking stupid. It's a waste of everybody's time, but it's a paycheck for people in the industry.
I'm just gonna keep putting up Huevos' comment.
Put me in your next film.
If it keeps making money, they're gonna just keep doing it. But Charlie, they just like.
Yeah, why is it that why did James Wan not direct 3, 4, or 5? It's because James Wan knows that if he produces it, he'll make money. But if he will protect his directorial clout. But he doesn't give a fuck when it comes to sequels to things he's made. And the Spielberg does the same thing. Spielberg won't direct something if he knows it's going to be bad. Why did he not direct Indiana Jones 5? Well, because he's like, it's going to be terrible, but I'll make money off of it, so I'll produce it.
All right.
Speaking of franchises that go on too long, I'm excited for Mission Impossible next week.
Oh, very, very, very.
I feel like the biggest difference though there is one,
Tom Cruise.
Mission Impossible.
Tom
follows different
Cruise
rules.
doesn't make bad movies.
But I also think that
Like War of the Worlds.
Impossible series doesn't follow the same. It doesn't fall into the same categories, and sometimes with these movies, like for instance, like a movie like John Wick or Mission Impossible or Fast and the Furious, like they have a certain thing that you go to see those movies for. And the Mission Impossible movies are all about the stunts that Tom Cruise does, generally speaking. But like, of course, there's always. I feel like the plots in those movies are usually about the same. It's usually like, oh, he's a rogue agent now. We got to catch him. And then we got to do this crazy mission to prove that we weren't the bad guys all along. Like it's every single movie's like that. But at the same time, it's like, it's still entertaining as hell. And so I'm not mad about it. So that's next week. That's next week. Mission Impossible 7. And then we see Barbie Oppenheimer. It should just be called You should just do a double. You just go Barbie Oppenheimer. You just go to the theater.
Barbie Oppenheimer.
Barbie Oppenheimer. I'm down. Yeah. I'm excited. It's just gonna be fun.
Anyway,
it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
We are toasting to Patrick.
Sorry, your first movie.
Is this his first? Him, but then we're like,
his directorial
it's his first
debut
movie. It's his first.
Is that
film.
what we're doing? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
think
know what
so.
we're gonna toast to. I really don't.
For Patrick. Right?
I don't. Yeah.
Did Bond just take out Batman?
Bond took out the bat. I need another one. Someone send me more. Send me more of these like metal tin things, and I will plaster them up. And then we'll just wait and see which one. Like there should be like a running ticker and say like, okay, guys, which one's gonna fall off first?
Yeah.
And then if you guess the right one, we'll send you a T-shirt. Or a sticker.
I mean, okay, let me just say this about Mr. Patrick Wilson. He really is. He's one of those actors who's like, oh, that guy, right? He's one of those actors. But I've always really enjoyed this guy. He's he's a talented actor. He's a talented actor who doesn't he doesn't seem to be caught up by the, People Magazine and like Entertainment Tonight. Like he seems like just a professional who cares about what he's making. Unfortunately, that he would be his first movie to direct would be the fifth movie of a franchise that's long past its prime.
He needs some sort of breakout role.
I hope to see him.
I will also go as
dominate something going forward.
I think part of it is really like you look at his background. He's a theater kid, right? He's a theater actor. I think part of it is that because he should have been basically what I'm saying. He should have directed a drama, and I feel like when you watch this movie, you feel like that's really what he wanted to do is direct a drama with people talking.
Yeah, it's funny you said that.
And the problem is that like this movie, when you do a horror film, you have to understand how to get an audience visually. And that's something that you learn from people like Hitchcock and Spielberg and Kubrick. But that's not like an actor's thing like Nicholas Myers or the guy who directed The Graduate, where it's like it's people talking in rooms for 90 minutes. And it's like it's captivating because of their performances. That's what he should have been doing. Or at least I'm hoping if he does another movie, it's not a horror film. It's more of like it's just a straight, people talking in rooms about how they're going to sell the next Converse shoe or something. I don't know. I'm trying to make a joke about air there. I don't know. But yeah, that's all I'm saying is I think that's what I think he should be doing. But I just think, he does a decent job here. As far as like the directing of the actors, it's not terrible. But as far as the overall movie, it could have been better.
No, it wasn't complete crap. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But
it's low on the list, but it's
I didn't hate it,
my first thought
hate it.
Watching the first 20 minutes, I was like, Patrick, you're doing all right. But apparently he wasn't given the best starter script.
Well, it kind of felt like with Plane, where we were like, it felt like Plane, where it's like, oh, I have this really fun, cool idea, but like I can't really like bring that all the way around for every scene. So it's just like, oh, I'm using it here. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
For Patrick.
Good night, fellas.